Stop comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 10. If you're in your 20s right now, I already know some of what you're carrying. The pressure of watching people your age get married, get promoted, buy houses, build platforms, while you're still figuring out rent, still figuring out who you even are. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a quiet voice keeps whispering, "You're behind." I want to speak directly to that voice today because I don't think it's telling you the truth. Here's something nobody tells you about your 20s. They were never designed to look like anyone else's. But social media has convinced an entire generation that life is a race with checkpoints everyone should hit at the same time. Married by 25, career established by 27, house by 30. And if you haven't hit those checkpoints, something feels wrong. But here's the truth. Comparison isn't just discouraging, it's dishonest. Because you are not seeing someone else's whole story. You're seeing their highlight reel, filtered and curated, missing every struggle that got them there. Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, "There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens." Not the same time for everyone. A time. Your time. Your season looks different because your calling looks different. Let's look at some timelines in Scripture that would have felt like failure by today's standards. Moses didn't step into his calling until he was 80 years old. 80. He spent 40 years as a prince in Egypt, then 40 more years as a shepherd in the wilderness. A season that probably felt like a complete waste of his potential before God ever used him to lead a nation out of slavery. Abraham was promised a son and didn't see that promise fulfilled until he was 100 years old. David was anointed king as a teenager, but didn't actually sit on the throne until years later, after seasons of running, hiding, and waiting. None of these men's timelines would have performed well on social media. By the world's standard, they all look behind, but by God's standard, they were exactly on time. I say this to you directly. Your 20s are not a waiting room before your real life starts. They are your real life. Every job, every heartbreak, every uncertain season, that's not delay, that's formation. If your 20s aren't for having everything figured out, what are they for? They're for becoming. This is the decade where your character gets shaped more than your resume does. The friendships you build, the mistakes you make and recover from, the faith you develop when nobody's watching, these are the foundations for everything that comes later. Joseph spent his 20s in slavery and prison before stepping into leadership. David spent years being chased through wilderness before becoming king. Even Jesus, the Son of God himself, spent roughly 30 years in obscurity in a carpenter's shop before he ever began public ministry. 30 years of preparation for 3 years of ministry that changed history. If Jesus needed a season of quiet preparation before his calling unfolded, what makes us think we're exempt from that process? Here's something important. Rushing your season doesn't actually get you there faster. It usually gets you there unprepared. Think about it. If Joseph had been given the throne in Egypt at 17, right when he first had his dream, would he have had the wisdom to handle that kind of power? The years of hardship weren't wasted time. They were the training ground for the character he'd need to carry that authority well. Sometimes what feels like delay is actually God protecting you from a blessing you're not ready to steward yet. So what do you do with this? First, mute the comparison. Literally, if certain accounts on social media constantly trigger that "I'm behind" feeling, it's okay to unfollow or mute them for a season. Protecting your mind is not weakness, it's wisdom. Second, invest in who you're becoming, not just what you're achieving. Ask yourself, am I growing in character, in faith, in wisdom, even if my circumstances haven't caught up yet? Third, celebrate small progress. Growth rarely looks dramatic in the moment. It looks like showing up again today, choosing faith again today. That's not nothing. That's everything, compounding quietly. If you remember one thing from this message, let it be this: you are not behind. You are not late. You are exactly where God is forming you for what's next. Your 20s are not a waste. They are the quiet chapters where the rest of your story gets written. Stop comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 10. Your story hasn't even gotten good yet. If this hit you where you are right now, comment below, what season are you in and what are you believing God for? And share this with a friend who needs to hear they're not behind either. I'll see you next time.